synthesizern.
I certainly can.
Somebody that's already dead. How are we going to kill somebody that's already dead? It's because of men like you that all must be destroyed. It's because of men like you that all must be destroyed.
not change your mind. You just better not.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi there. We are late tonight. Sorry. That's because we were all waiting for Justin, who finally decided to show up.
It's true.
Yes. Blame the late comer.
Yes, don't blame the fact that I pressed the button too late, because that's no good. So welcome, robots. Thank you for joining us for another exciting episode of Tangents, your bi-weekly show where we bitch and complain and shit talk about music gear and then wonder why no one sends us anything fun. With me tonight are, of course, our panel of synthesizer experts, production gurus, and beautiful men. Christoph, how are you tonight?
Little blue steel, Christoph, blue steel.
I'm doing well. I had my first live DJ gig in, 18 months on Friday. And it's a big pain in the ass to move all your stuff to go to a gig instead of just streaming out of your bedroom.
Truth. Well, very good. I hope it went well.
It did.
Good.
So, except for having to move things and interact with human beings.
Yeah, there's that. And then you had to put everything back when you were done.
Yep.
That's the part of the thing that sucks.
It's so much work, and I had to rewire it all for today.
Well, the good news is that there's the pandemic's coming back around, so you won't have to do that again.
Yeah, that should take care of it.
Thanks, assholes. And hello, Synthland. Right back at you. Jeff, how are you tonight?
I'm doing
What's new
great.
in your world?
In keeping with companies don't send us things, it turns out actually that I can't even get companies to send me things when I send the money for them at this point. So I still await the fabled UDO Super
I don't
6.
think you really bought it. I think
no.
you're lying to us.
I'm lying to myself at this point, I guess. Yeah, no. So apparently our reputation precedes us. No, let's see what's going on. Not a lot, honestly. The biggest thing here is I'm still waiting for that. I've got to. I'm still doing the REM challenge this year. I have not done a July song. That's due Saturday, so I should probably do that soon.
Maybe Friday night.
And
Maybe you could write it about your missing
There
Udo
you go.
and why you should have ordered it from Alibaba.
and just play it like this. Just the song is just like me tapping on nothing. Worked on some guitars, but that's about it. Just kind of carrying on, waiting for the synth to come up, for Santa Claus.
Santa Claus.
Well, cool. I hope it shows up. I mean, it at this point, it's almost a legend
Yeah,
or a myth.
that's how I'm feeling about it too.
I think there's a bunch of customs officers somewhere in the UK who've set up a studio of stolen equipment,
Right?
jamming on your video now.
Toad.
Just having a spot of tea,
Setting
Yeah,
the tea on
little
top
jam. Yeah. Criminals.
not to disparage the United Kingdom's customs officials, who I'm sure are just fine. Sorry
of it.
about that.
Finest in customs.
You know who I blame? Sheffield.
That sounds good. Yeah,
Sheffield.
Fuck Sheffield.
It's not enough to be the Cleveland of the UK. You have to be blamed for stuff.
What'd Sheffield ever give us besides Cabaret Voltaire? Clock
Me,
DVA,
Heaven 17,
Heaven 17,
Clock DPA.
and that great documentary about the Sheffield scene.
And they all lived in the same apartment.
No, can you imagine? And when Def Leppard,
Everyone in Sheffield.
Def Leppard too.
They shared one bed.
All of Def
Wait,
Leppard.
all the dudes at Def Leppard,
All of
of
them shared
them
one bed.
shared one bed.
It was easier with the dude with the missing arm.
That's a hell of a bed set right there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh dear.
So Justin, how are you?
I'm fair. I'm okay. Yeah, hanging in there. Finally sent that stuff off to Adam to get mastered, so
Very good.
we'll see when he gets that sorted out.
Yes.
Working on some stuff with you, which is real exciting.
Yeah.
I pretty much worked out what I want to do. I just need to start laying down some tracks. It took me a minute. We can talk about that later. I don't want to go on about it, but it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I bought a 6-tier Jasper stand, which is sitting in the room next to me. Surprisingly, took no time at all. Come from Germany.
Really?
Took more friggin' time in the U.S. Yeah, stupid, right? But yeah, I'm having sound audio problems, so I needed a center stuff, my space. In order to do that, I need to consolidate my synths. And what I've got now is a 3 and a 2 next to each other. So in order to consolidate space, I had to move up and down. So the 6 tier, the top and bottom are totally useless if you're trying to play. It's just like a place to store your keyboard, really.
True.
But yeah, that's about it. How about you, Andrew?
Well, let's see here. What's new? Not much. I got an MPC-1, and I so far have been able to turn it on and update the software.
Woot.
And that's the extent of my usage of the MPC-1. That's my full review. Make sure to follow us on YouTube and smash that like button and ring the bell for more great reviews.
How is the power switch on it? Is it really good?
It powers on like no one's business, and it boots up. It's got a beautiful boot screen.
That's a 10.
It says MPC and got like these swirly things.
Ooh, got power like Nikola Tesla.
Ooh, yeah. Trying to figure out where to put it. Yeah, so I got that, and I think in 2 weeks we're doing another Synth Fest with the Golden Shrimp Guild. The theme is 808 because it's going to be August 8th when we do part of it. So it's going to be a lot of fucking breakdancing and stuff like that, I think.
Sweet.
So bring your own cardboard.
Nice.
It's one of those kinds of parties.
Nice.
And, yeah,
You gonna do some 2 Live Crew covers?
I am nothing but a 2 Live Crew cover. I live that life. That's me.
Man, I tell you, it's that Florida, that Miami bass sound, man. You get to keep those cars rattling, dude.
Right? Whew. Hello, Wambra. Yeah, I typed in music, and there's no music tonight. Well, there was music during our intro, and we're going to talk about music stuff because that's what we do on Wednesday nights, every other Wednesday night from 9 to 11. We bore everyone to death before bedtime with our yammering about synthesizers and music gear and our complaints therein. So, exactly. So with that, I'm glad everyone's doing well. And let's dive into what we got going on tonight. And Christoph is filling the chat room with Skinny Puppy trivia.
Well, 808 and 909.
Nice.
And it'll come up this week because of the multi-move.
Indeed.
Oh, yeah. Is that on our list, or that's an overflow from last time?
I think that is overflow from last time, isn't it? We did not get a chance to talk about that. So let's start with that first. It means I have to go and find that story.
All right. Are you talking about the Cherry Audio thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That thing is sweet.
Yeah, so Cherry Audio.
The memory mode.
Again.
Killing
Once
it.
again,
Just killing
put
it.
out the multi-moog. Let me go.
Oh, did that not make it into tonight's
Did I
show
not
notes?
get that in there? I
For
thought
the-
I did.
No, you put it in last week's, and we just, I think we didn't get to it.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That was
and
my
I guess
bad.
it didn't
Let
make
me
it
jump in there real quick and let me add that in there.
All right. Well, to sum up, the multi-moog is notoriously unreliable. People liked the sound of it, but they were often having to get repaired. Full multi-moog might be much better than the actual experience of having a multi-moog. But one of the, I think there was a famous clone that I think was kind of a multi-moog because the multi-moog has patch memory, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's I think it's the memory moog that it's based on.
Oh, you're right. The memory moog I'm thinking, not the multi-moog.
Yep. But yes, it does have patch memory.
Yep.
And
There we go.
for the price of the Cherry Audio, so this is, you could buy the Cherry Audio 410 times or one memory moog.
Yeah.
Or you could buy one Moog 1 for all of that, which is funny because they kept the sort of visual of the memory Moog in the Moog 1. It's kind of their homage, and it similarly had some of the same problems in terms of the gain staging and the oscillators and the unreliability of the tuning, which I find hilarious. I love Moog to death, but oh my gosh, really, guys? really.
You gotta stay on brand. There's only one of them right now on Reverb, and this bad boy. Oh, JK, I was wrong. There's two. There are two of them on Reverb, and the cheaper of the two is going for 16,000. The more expensive of the two is 31 grand.
Okay. So you could buy a few of the Cherry Audios.
So the
for that.
Cherry Audio one is going for $30.
Yeah, so that's at least two.
I mean, let's not undercall it. It is 39.
Okay, so like $40. So that's still about like you can buy for the price of one real memory mode. You can buy like a couple thousand licenses of this.
There's hundreds of memory modes
of memory modes, and give them to those less deserving.
Yeah.
I'll
and
live
you can get this one in a light wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could buy the entire Cherry Audio library. You might even be able to buy the Cherry Audio company for the price of
or
those
at least a
two
dream
cents.
date with their chief programmer.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Or his house.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I'd rather just live vicariously through Dave Spears. I don't think I need one of those in my house.
That's never been. That's a device that's never been on my even close to radar. Because why would I? No, I don't want an unreliable $30,000 synthesizer.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a collector's item. There's definitely a collector's market for since it's become a hip thing ever since modular took off. But this is not worth it as a tool. But if you want to listen to it, it is on early Skinny Puppy up to Vivis X6.
Nice. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That must have been laying around in the studio because I obviously they didn't gig with that thing.
No.
No, I don't think so. Didn't see any of the Vivisect tours or before that, so I'm not sure what was on stage. But it doesn't seem. I know they toured with one of the Moogs, the Mini Moog.
I think it was the Mini Moog. I remember
their European tour.
The live video they did. What was that called?
DX7, man. There's a DX7 on stage.
Yeah.
I think a Pro 3.
Yeah, and then there was something that had a lot of floppy disks. I think that was probably their emulator. No.
Actually, the Emacs or Mirage.
Oh, the
Emacs and the Mirage, because I think they were on page.
So I know they later had a Kurzweil, but the Kurzweil I think was released after that film was made.
Yeah.
So he was the first to master the Mirage.
Nice. I like that. I'm glad that Womber's keeping up with us. He knows exactly who we're talking about when we're talking about Skinny Puppy. He's even talking about Kevin Key. May or may not like marijuana a little bit.
Yeah, and they've never toured with a Fairlight, but Ministry did. So Ministry had 3 Fairlights at one point.
Didn't Uncle Al pull like a big swindle to get the record label to buy him one?
Yep.
Yeah, that's why he signed to Arista in exchange for the Fairlight.
Yep.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Look what that got him.
Stuff.
I know, right? There's a whole part of me that's just kind of like the folks that like bought, that invested that amount of money into that piece of gear, and there in a way there's certain like non-permanence to that stuff. I mean, the floppy drives, the floppy disks just demagnetize over time and stuff like that, and obviously everything else. The light pen stops working, that kind of thing, and then you just kind of have this small house worth of metal sitting around instead. Yep. It's just kind of like oof.
Well, it's crazy though, because when they sort of briefly reformed, or was it about 7 years ago?
Yeah.
And they were shipping new ones, right? Which was insane.
Right.
And they were like still insanely expensive. But it's interesting to look at the type of folks that picked them up, like Thomas Dolby did. Pretty sure Peter Gabriel did. I mean, these people could have anything they wanted, and they were like, "No, I want a brand new CMI."
Yeah, I love my original one. I want a new one.
Yeah, well, that's just it. You get used to a certain workflow. It's like the guy from Game of Thrones still writes in WordStar 5 because what he knows.
Yeah. Oh, that's a DOS 62 app. Yeah.
So I could see that. If you get used to a certain flow, you want to stick with it. So, but speaking about how you put in this ton of money and then it doesn't hold its value. So I'm a huge fan of Alan Howarth, who did the sound effects for the Star Trek movies and was the co-writer of a lot of the John Carpenter scores. So he did the synth work, and John Carpenter did the composition, but he made the sounds and took care of that. So because he was doing film scores, he was an early adopter of a big synclavier system. And he had to rewire the electricity of his house because it requires 30 amps. And racks of gear wouldn't even go up his stairs. They had to like move walls to get it in. And, it kind of drove his wife nuts. It was a giant investment. Just like Kraftwerk's synclavier system, which was fully loaded, cost about $500,000. And he was asked how, and they were like, since all this stuff you could get for just like a few $1,000s 10 years later, do you regret it? It's like, and he said no, because it enabled him to do things before anybody else could.
Yeah.
And so there's something about being like, and so he outcompeted all these other people that couldn't do what he could for years. So it doesn't hold value long term. It's not a good in that sense, but he was able to do the work, right then. And so for him, that was worth it. So it depends what your goals are. But yeah, if money doing it, it's going to pay itself off, then you're fine. But if you're like me, where you're just throwing money away, then it is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. That's still a big investment, especially in 1980s dollars.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like my mom's condo cost $60,000 in the 80s, and that's what the synclavier was going for.
Yeah.
It's like the one guy, I think it was
I'm sorry, the Fairlight was going for 60.
Yeah.
Not the synclavier.
I think Synclavier was going for a little bit more. And it reminds me of
Much.
I think it was one of the guys from Human League or something like that, where he talked about you could either get a car or you could get a synthesizer, and he still doesn't own a car.
Yeah, 242 as well.
Yeah. That was one of those early, either a Roland or it was one of those kit synths. I don't remember, but it was one of those two.
That was one of those old, like one of the old Korgs. I can't remember.
Korg, yeah, it was something like that.
Anyway, yeah, Cherry Audio, throw money in.
Won the lottery.
What's that?
And they won in 242. Somebody's family won the lottery, and they got them a sequencer. That's how bad it used to be.
It's like Circlon dollars.
Wow. So yeah, everyone should go buy the Cherry Audio Memory Moog VST and go and take a look at everything else that Cherry Audio makes as well, because they make a whole lot of stuff. So yeah, and they're a really good company. Next piece of news is Teenage Engineering updated the OP1 for its 10th birthday and gave it USB audio. That's kind of cool if you're an OP1 person.
So is the shortage on those things still going on, or what's going on with that? Did they?
I think that they're. I mean, I think they're in. You can get them pretty much anywhere nowadays, or not anywhere, but like you can probably get them wherever those kinds of synths are sold. I know that like Sweetwater stopped carrying Teenage Engineering stuff.
Yeah,
because their support was so bad that they're like, we can't. They're currently out of stock on Perfect Circuit and still going for $1,100.
Wow.
Yeah.
You can buy
them at Sam Ash for a kidney.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can buy
on their site too.
Tomon for like $1,000 US.
Wow. It's still, I mean, I had one for a while and it was fun, but it's, I mean, to me at least it was a little bit gimmicky. And I couldn't really work with it for very long. I did sell it at a profit though, because I think I got it for $700 and I sold it for $1,200. So
I think it's from what I've seen of it. I don't have one as one. I looked at them for a long time and considered it, but it looks like I think if you want to make music that's OP1 music, it's probably the best way to make OP1 music.
That's true.
I think if I was asked to do a soundtrack to an Adventure Time miniseries.
Oh.
But otherwise, I don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like the one had FM radio in it, which is super neat, right?
Yeah, they
is it
have
the OP one?
yeah, it has an
Yeah.
OP, it has
Yeah.
an FM radio in there and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of stuff too. I mean, it wasn't ever the most powerful synthesizer or anything, but 10 years ago, there was some pretty novel stuff going on there.
Well, I think that they had a very specific business model of doing more with less. So they wanted to kind of like give people like limits intentionally, just to help people like get the to work on music in a certain way and everything like that. My trouble with it is I really didn't like the recording feature in there because it was acting like an old multi-track tape. So like lining up your tracks and stuff like that was kind of a pain in the butt.
Yikes.
For me at least and stuff like that. I know that most time people were just dumping them out and working on those loops in a DAW and stuff like that. But I don't know. It was kind of neat, but it didn't do what I wanted to do. But now, I mean, it's got the USB audio. That's kind of nice. So you get that going through there. That's like the biggest feature that they did on it. And it's nice that after 10 years they're still updating it.
Yeah. And they just put out that comically expensive radio that you can play.
They did. That comically expensive speaker as well. Like the $1,000+ speaker.
Oh yeah. I was thinking of the what was the radio called? The
I can't remember.
Oh yeah, they put out a radio that's like $600-$700 too.
Yeah, I remember it was really expensive, and they put out like these headphones that were really, really expensive, and they sounded kind of bad, like a little headset for your stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Were they the ones that did that yellow modular kit thing? Was
Yeah,
that
the one that did like
Yeah.
if you bent it wrong, you would snap the steel in half, but you had to like bend it in order to put it together.
Yeah, that thing. Great.
Pocket operator modular 400 and 170.
Yep.
And they did another one, a 16. It's a very clever, catchy name.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, Christoph, do you have the links?
Numbers.
Oh,
Okay,
sure.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm just reading all my stuff off of an iPad, so I can't put them up on there myself because I'm slow and dumb and doing two things at once. But yeah, I don't. I have an OPZ or OPZ, whatever you want to call it, and I really don't like that thing either. I think it was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of shoddily put together. Like it has sticky key, like the keys will stick randomly and like double play and everything like that. I'm just kind of like, this is not useful at all.
I had never understood that thing. It looks like a very bad television remote from 1994.
It kind of feels like it.
And it also for sure looks like something that you have to use with the computer. Maybe that's not true. I don't know, but like it looks to me like you would have to use it with a computer.
You can use it with a phone
to get anything. Oh, perfect, good. So in either case, it's the worst version of the interface that you've already got in front of you.
Well,
I don't know.
because you have to get a Lego Mindstrums and hook up some rubber bands if you want an LFO.
That's true. That's true. There's some things that I thought was kind of cool, and then I got it, and I'm like, I'm never going to use this. Like, it had a built-in DMX control in it, so you can like sequence DMX and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, and it had like the video sequencing in it as well.
Yeah, the video stuff is. I've seen Cuckoo do some really cool stuff with the video.
And I'm like, oh, that'd be fun to learn. And I never wanted to. And I looked at it, I'm like, no, I'm never going to do that.
Yeah.
Well, the screen looked nice, and I think kind of what they're intentionally selling is a workflow. I mean, saying like, this is this weird workflow. I know we're going to talk about Soma later because I think they've got that on lock. Weird workflows, but
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that, like I said, I'm glad that they're still supporting the OP1. I really wish that they had a better support system there because their support's horrible. And yeah, I'm not a big fan. And like pocket operators, not a really big fan of them. I got big, beefy fingers, and they don't really work well for me. So I don't know.
For the record, I'll say nice things about Teenage Engineering if they send me
There
one.
you go.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely my favorite synth that I will have gotten for free.
Yes.
Yeah. I know that little drum machine version, the operator that we were playing. I think that thing was pretty tight, actually. But I mean, it was still fiddly, but it sounded pretty good.
Yeah, it's fun, but that's about it. I don't know. Let's. I don't know if we should continue talking shit about it or not. I just saw that our lawyer Commander Root just joined in, so he might have something to say about that. So
Oh dear.
Just watch out for Commander Root, leader of the X Studios law team.
It's only slanderous if it's not true.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I'm not saying that the CEO of Teenage Engineering is in fact made out of Swiss cheese.
I can merely postulate that
Yes,
he's made of Swiss
all
cheese.
I know is
They're saying,
all I know is that he is all I know is that he's holy.
Oh, man. You know how to come in clutch with that thing, dude. It's perfect.
You've only got one trick.
With many sounds.
Gotta hone it to a fine edge.
Something like that. So Boss came out with a guitar that's a synthesizer and a MIDI guitar and still a guitar at the same time, and it's yours for a cool $2,200. It's the EURUS GS-1. EURUS.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce that? Boss, can you please send us one, and as well as a person to tell us how to pronounce this thing correctly? That would be fantastic. You guys are, in fact, the boss. So yeah, guitar synthesizers. Let's talk about guitar synthesizers real quick. Who's dealt with one?
I have played with one in music stores. Could never afford one. I frequently lusted after the GR series back in the day, a number of them. And they sound. I mean, they were always great sounding with people that use them. I know Andy Summers used it a lot in the Police, starting around Ghost in the Machine. They sound great in general, but they always had this sort of weird issues where you either needed a rolling guitar or you needed to sort of retrofit some pickups on there, and then your tracking problems. You couldn't really play freely, and you couldn't play it expressively because it wouldn't pick any of that up. It would just be signal noise. So there's a lot of issues with that. And, you know, a lot of pedals now have synths in them, both in the bass side of the house. And but what, you know, to say that they're synths is a little misleading. And I have questions about this one. I didn't do enough research into it. So those synths would take signal input, convert it into MIDI or something, and then play a note inside an internal synth. Your standard pedal is actually more like an octaver pedal, and that it's listening to the sound, and then it's just playing a square wave or something based on that input, which is like what my bass pedal does, well, my octave pedal. So this sounded to me a lot more like that than the former when I watched some of the demos. I mean, it sounded great. It looks cool.
Yeah.
It's a little too pricey for me when I can just buy a boutique guitar synth pedal.
Yeah, that's kind of my take on it too. My experience of playing the guitar synths in the past. So my interest in guitar is like fast and loud, and so I mean, like, I started playing guitar because of Yngwie Malmsteen and Van Halen, and so that's like I just want to play as fast as possible, and I found them almost useless.
Oh, for that.
Totally. Like, it was just completely unplayable unless you toned it back, you know, to a tenth of the speed and then sped it up later. But I'm a very mediocre keyboardist, and I keep holding out hope that one of these days that somebody's going to come up with something that I can play legitimately like a guitar, and like a MIDI controller, essentially, that I can play like a guitar, because it would just be a revelation.
I mean, they come out with things over the years, like Artifon came out with something.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't have strings. It was sort of emulating it. And I know like Gaz Williams complains all the time because he's a bass player, and that's my primary string instrument. And I also play synth bass. And to me, but I still think I'm a better bassist than a synth player. So to me, I would like to be able to play synth bass on a bass. That would be super cool.
Yeah.
But I've decided that's just not going to happen in my lifetime, and I'm getting over it.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was getting out of this thing too. I think some of the more interesting stuff is like the way that they have Bluetooth implemented. So it has some built-in effects that are pretty neat. Like, I mean, if you're into Boss effects, I think Boss effects sound great. So if you're into Boss effects, and this has, I mean, obviously if it's using the pickups, then it could have some sort of a processing unit on board, whether that's analog or digital, whatever, and then it can transmit that to this Bluetooth foot pedal contraption. Like, it could be pretty cool, but it doesn't look like it's going to get all the way to where I wish it could be.
Yeah, I think that I mean every guitar synthesizer I've had to deal with, and I don't play guitar at all, so I've just had to deal with other people's guitar synthesizers. They were persnickety at best and hot garbage at the worst. I was in a band with a guy who had was it the GR7?
Yep.
That classic 80s kind of machine gun looking guitar thing, and he had the programmer and the big old pedal machine thing.
That's the one with the big handle on
Yeah.
it, right? It's got
Yeah, I think that was a GR7. I think it was. I don't know. It was rolling some into his garbage anyway. And I remember that the pickups would never pick up anything on the highest string on there.
weird.
Oh, nice.
So you're
Yeah,
just
they're really persnickety about what gauge of strings you play.
Yeah, so he was like, well, I just won't play that string. And then he just took it off. And he just played
needs
4
it?
strings on the guitar. I mean, he was mostly playing shoegazery kind of guitar anyway, but once in a while he wanted to have it get weird sounding, so it was handy for that kind of thing. But it was he'd play it, and then once in a while the pickup would be and then that's pretty much how that worked. And then another friend of mine had a bass that he put the pickup in, the synth pickup, and that thing just wouldn't pick up at all, really. It was just it was really difficult and cantankerous. And that was more recent, so it's good to hear that they're still not really there.
Yeah. For this one, I will say, though, one of the things that sort of struck me on it is I think it's really beautiful. The body design is awesome. It's somewhere between a traditional Fender Strat and a Jazzmaster, the Jagstang, and an Ibanez RG. I don't know. It's a really neat take on that sort of general Stratocaster shape.
Yeah,
it's very pretty.
No, I think does it have a tremolo bar on it? I think it does.
It does. It's got a floating tremolo.
Nice.
It's got the claw springs in the back and everything. And it's got volume and tone control which is kind of unusual on that. I mean, that's more of a Les Paul kind of thing because it's got it for each pickup. One of these days, somebody will invent it. One of these days, I'm just going to keep holding out hope. I'm just going to do it one of these days.
Oh, I mean, if you like playing guitar but don't want to meet girls, Boss has the guitar for you.
Yeah. You're saying you might as well be a guitar.
And it's got Bluetooth, so your mom can call you while you're playing.
Somebody is going to figure out some weird shit to do with this thing where they can use Bluetooth to connect it to something else and do some weird sound mangling. There probably is some cool circuit bending stuff you could do with that Bluetooth too.
Quite possibly. Yeah, it's a nice guitar, $2,200. Wonder if it works. Well, if anything, you got a nice looking guitar.
Who could say?
Even if the synth part doesn't work, who cares? Our first piece of Behringer news. Fucking Behringer.
So this is really exciting.
This one is actually whoa, okay. So Vladimir Kuzmin and Behringer announced that they have entered into a collaboration to develop a new Polivoks synthesizer. Christoph, you posted this up, yeah?
Yes, I did. So Polivoks has got a real cult following. I know Jeff's a fan of Protovolt, who loves his Polivoks. I have a friend in New York who has a Polivoks. They're unique sounding. They have weird stuff going on in their synthesis engines. People seem to really love them. They're hard to find because they're Russian, or they're actually Soviet-era synthesizers. which has a coolness factor to it. And the guy who designed them, Vladimir Kuzmin, he said he's not going to do just a straight reissue because that's the past. But he's got some kind of relationship with Behringer where they're going to develop a new synth that'll be using concepts and technology from the old Polivoks, but making something new. And this is going to be the new hipster synth of 2022, I bet.
Nice.
Well, good on Behringer for finally finding their ethics team wherever they're hiding.
Right.
That's cool.
I think they were.
Well, I mean, it's such a big company. There are people doing things the right way, and then there's them doing Behringer the Behringer way. You know, like they've got a lot of the 2600 people involved with the company, or people that were doing their own rebuild. Like there was a company that was doing rebuilds and reformations, and they worked very that's who the team was for making the 2600. So sometimes they have the right people involved, but then they tried to get Devilfish involved, and I guess the terms didn't work out, and so it's like, well, we'll do it without you then. So so they do it both ways. But yeah, so this is exciting.
It is. That would be really cool.
So we'll see what comes of it. So I do know that they announced that their DS80 clone isn't going to happen for years, that it's still years out. So this is just announced, so who knows when it's going to happen. But I will say, at least this isn't them making an announcement just to let Korg know, all right, so you don't do it because we're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which a lot of their announcements are like, hey, we're going to reissue the MS-20. So if you do it again, you're going to have competition.
Yeah. I get the feeling they're peeing in a lot of people's corners like that.
Yeah. I do respect them pissing in Roland's corner, because when Roland does these reissues, they don't do it the way people want, because they're not doing analog reissues. They're doing virtual analog reissues.
For sure.
I actually could see Uli literally doing that, sneaking in the factory, just whizzing out of spite.
Just peeing on, driving by and throwing a bag of piss into Roland's window or something like that.
No, I could see him making eye contact and say, yeah, watch me.
Yeah, right. This is what you get when you play with ukuleles.
Oh, that's pretty impressive. I can't even pee when I'm standing next to someone in a public restroom, more or less staring.
Especially when they're staring at you, like that one time.
But I understand that Eli is exactly the kind of guy that can do that.
Yeah.
The guy that stands next to you for no reason when there's 8 stalls and then wants to have a conversation.
Even worse, he's like, no, you got to talk to me. I can't go unless you stare right at me. Yeah, that's hot.
Awkward.
And yet so sexy. So yeah, I mean, this is actually some cool stuff coming from Behringer. I'm not saying that nothing they do is cool.
No, actually, I would actually be willing to say that a lot of what they do is legitimately kind of cool. It's just gone about sort of whack ways.
Yeah, it's just that they keep doing things that are insanely dumb.
Yeah. The Polivoks has a pretty interesting sound to it too. That's actually one of the things that I think is the most interesting about this is that, yeah, the Junos had a pretty iconic sound, but there's a gazillion versions of that stuff out there now. So the DeepMind really, it's novel in the sense that it was an analog synthesizer, but there's so many synthesizers that can recreate that sound. There's not a lot of stuff that has that Polivoks sound. So that's neat too. It's legitimately different and a bit unusual.
I think
it's similar to the OBXA or SEM sound. Not a lot of synths have that filter sound. So yeah.
I think that the DeepMind 12 was pretty amazing just because you had this 12 voice analog poly synth for $800. The last time you had something that was that many voices in an analog synthesizer that was remotely affordable was probably the Andromeda.
Mm-hmm.
And that was how many thousand when it came out?
Was
3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just on that alone, it's a game changer.
Yeah. So I think that they did an amazing job, and I think that one of the things that I didn't, I had issues with the DeepMind, but I think that one of the things that did do is it really kind of opened up a whole idea of doing inexpensive analog synthesizers between them and the Arturia Mini Brute. I would argue that those two things really brought in like affordable analog synthesis. And then, like, you know, when Korg came in with the mini log and stuff like that, that just kind of like sealed the deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's cool. In other Behringer news, they're pooping out another Roland clone, the SH5. They made that announcement, or they teased it, I should say. The MS5 is what they're calling it. MS for Microsoft. So Microsoft 5, Behringer's putting out. I know that Wambra said that thing looks like it's going to be pretty cool. I don't know anything about the SH5. Again, I'm not much of a Roland person, so I can't speak of this without any kind of expertise. Justin, you're kind of like the Roland character.
Yeah. So yeah, it sucks because big fan of the SH series that they did, and even the plug outs to me sound really good. So it's unfortunate in a sense that we're in a position where, I mean, how should I put this? So like the ProMars is one of my faves. The System 100 is one of my faves. The SH2, which is this is the SH5, which is a different version. It just has a really, really nice sound. If you like that mono sound they did with their modulars and then with their little monophonic keyboards, then hopefully they'll capture it. I think the filters are unique, just like the Moog filters are unique. And if they're going to get it right, they've got to get that. Because honestly, the plug-out versions that I have that I use on the System 8 sound bloody good. And they'd be hard-pressed to get that. So I wish them the best of luck with that. I know that Maleko worked on the System 500? Was that the Eurorack kit that they had? Yeah, I mean, that thing sounds really good too, actually. So if they can get that sound for a low price, I can see doing this. I do like the Space 1999 lettering on that thing. I think it's very appealing. I hope, yeah. But I hope it sounds as good as it looks. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I don't know.
And again, this is a prototype. Who knows when they're going to do this? They have I think the Behringer has a very large rack of things that they're prototype staging right now. So it'll be interesting to see down the line what gets into production and what just kind of fades away. You know, sometimes I think that they're just kind of like, we're just going to put a bunch of stuff out there and see where it goes from there.
Yeah, just kind of test the
to
waters.
see what the priority list should be.
Yeah.
It does seem like their production line for monosynths is really rapid, though.
Yeah.
If the interest is there, this could be out this year.
Yeah.
Whereas the polysynths, it's a much more advanced production chain. But I think once they start putting out their new line of polysynths, they'll start to be able to do those very rapidly as well. Because I think they're doing it in a somewhat modular way.
Well, look at the chassis. It looks like the exact same chassis as the monopoly and the Polymoog clone. So,
yeah,
I mean, just put some different stencils on there and a few sliders and
put some Space 1999 handwriting on there and Justin sold. Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're probably reusing the keyboard from their other things.
For sure.
So, like I know they put a lot of R&D into developing a poly aftertouch keyboard, and this isn't it. So I'm sure they're putting that one in the DS80, but I hope that it'll be in the UBXA.
Oh, that would be nice if they did.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think everybody's really hoping that for a Jupiter 8 clone, and I think if they get that filter down, it's absolutely going to happen.
Agreed.
Now that it's like the king of the most expensive, desirable synths, finally beating that Korg, the 400.
Mm-hmm.
If they use the UBXA chassis, because that's part of the appeal of the Jupiter 8 is its bigness.
Yep. It has an I got to play one at the Vintage Synthesizer Museum out in Oakland, and it feels great. And I got to play that and the Jupiter 5 next to each other, and the feeling on both of them is just absolutely incredible. It's a Cadillac experience. So
Nice.
if they can recreate that, yeah, it'll be their bestseller.
Let's see here. Oh, a new 8.1 update for the Arturia collection. If you want drifty analog sound out of your soft synths, this is the update for you.
Oh, you're staring at me, or
Justin, you posted this one.
I did.
I know you like your
So
analog
it's
drift
funny.
after making my
Ugh.
Prophet 6 go into drifty analog
Oh.
lovin' mode.
It's very important.
It is.
No, I think. Well, let me just first off say that I think Arturia is doing really good stuff, and that they are updating their software, unlike other companies.
Native Instruments.
Yeah, sure, or even Roland. I mean, Roland comes out with new stuff, but rarely do they update their old stuff. In this case, they're always making stuff better, always doing cool stuff. To me, I think they were probably inspired by the controls that Dave Smith was working on. I would be really shocked, because I think they are the tier down market for people that want like an OB6 or a Prophet 6 and they can't afford it. This is a great tier to be at. And adding those controls, which are smart, which is not just oscillator instability, but like envelope instability, filter instability. I mean, that's like super. That's the way to do it if you want that sound. And I played a lot with it with their the OBXA clone thing that they did, and it sounds bloody good. So kudos to them.
I agree. That's a really important feature. That's something the DeepMind has that the Axis virus doesn't. And Starsky Carr did a video about how important that feature is for doing more accurate emulations and getting a real shimmer to your sound. And it makes sounds much beefier and fatter just with a tiny bit.
Yeah.
So it's a really important feature, and kudos to Arturia to thinking to add it. Because that's that's like to update it into all your stuff it's an undertaking. But it pays dividends in the long run.
It sounds good. I mean, it works really well. It's like when we put the drift mode into the Prophet 6 compared to what was on there, what they were doing before with the slot mode, which is just like they're just detuning an oscillator a little bit. I mean, it made a huge difference as far as how things sound. It's like, oh, this knob is actually a useful knob on this thing. All the knobs on the Prophet 6 was useful, but that one I never even bothered with it, because it's just like, well, look, I can turn it and it just makes it sound stupid.
Well, it was like detune that wobbles.
Yeah.
So it was like reliable
mode.
detune,
My
which isn't.
My Prophet 6 is drunk.
Yeah, exactly.
It's implemented really well on the Hydra synth too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it absolutely is. But yeah, so that's cool. I'm glad that they did those things. Yeah, we're busting through the news like gangbusters tonight. We're gonna have to stop and have like a long philosophical conversation about a couple of these things.
Or a rant.
Or a rant.
Rants.
So, Christoph, about those 303s. Christoph and I'll point angrily for the next 10 minutes while we stare.
Oh my god. Well played, sir. Well played.
All right, we feel better now. So here's some cool stuff that happened. MPC, our good friends at Akai, updated the MPC OS to 2.10, which gave them all kinds of crazy cool shit in their standalone boxes. The MPC already being a classic in beat creation and kind of like the ultimate groove boxes, now they added a bunch more stupid shit into this thing. Besides the new plugins and new effects and all that stuff, they also gave it USB audio interface support, which was kind of a big thing because now you can hook up to 32 channels into this thing.
That's monster. 32 is huge.
That's fucking ridiculous. And any class compliant audio interface you plug in and boom, there you go. So that's pretty damn amazing. So, I mean, granted, these modern MPCs, they're pretty much just like little computers anyway, right? They're just running DAW software, and that's all they boot into, you know. But at the same time, though, if you don't want, you know, if you want to have a portable, you know, device that you can, you know, use when you're going wherever, you want to play shows with it, you want to use it as pretty much the central unit for your studio, and this just gives you more reason to be able to do these kinds of things. And they updated the software, and this is kind of an interesting idea that they did, where there are 3 main units that are out right now. I said units. The MPC-1, the MPC Live 2, and the MPC X are all running the same software, and they all work the same as far as that kind of thing is concerned. So, and now with that audio interfacing, it's just kind of like you can get the baseline, the MPC-1, that's like $700, and you can hook it up with a, you know, if you have a class compliant audio interface at home, you plug it in, and all of a sudden you have all those channels and stuff like that available to you.
Yeah, I think that's pretty neat, and it seems like they're really. Roland came out with that Verse Lab thing, which was, I don't know, it was kind of hard for me to tell exactly where that fit in with the machine, like the machine MPC stack of stuff, but it feels like that they are really just trying to establish themselves as we are the clear leaders, because, you know, Machine has the I don't remember what it's called. The relatively new big machine that can work in fully standalone mode.
Yeah.
The Plus.
Yeah, the Plus.
Machine Plus.
Yeah, that's why I can't remember. It's got a catchy name. And that one's got tons of cool features. But the new MPC is really just trying to sort of, I guess, like lengthen the distance between them or something. But between that stuff and adding the new effects on it, they also added like a whole new synthesizer to it, right? Like they added like a granular synthesizer, which I don't know. I haven't ever tried that with the pads, but I could see that you could. I don't know. It feels like it would fit in an interesting way in the general sort of MPC style workflow. Could be really cool.
Yeah, I mean the stuff they added. I mean, they put Hype on there, which I believe is already on the Force, I think, which is like their clip launching. So of all the stuff they put on there, is just, besides the effects, which are amazing, they put a ton of cool effects, but the fact that they've got like Mellotron and a Selena, I mean, they're definitely like, because I mean, I think based on the fact that they're limited hardware, you're not going to be able to just run rando VSTs in there. You can do that. You can do that with the software, you know, if you want to use their DAW or whatever. But then you're in, you know, you can't work completely standalone. You have to drop your beats into the software and then add your plugins and then bounce tracks and add them back. It's stupid. So, I mean, I think that was smart of them to start adding more stuff. I mean, their drum synth has always been really cool, but I think the fact that they added all the Odyssey and all this weird stuff, they're really increasing the palette and the flexibility, because, you know, they are such different animals, you know, in a way that like Machine was just this thing that was like software that could do all the stuff, that had a controller. It was totally integrated with the controller. And the MPC and Akai fucked around with that for a number of years, like with the Renaissance and stuff and the Touch, and it sucked. And in my opinion, I mean, my last MPC before that I bought was the 5000, which has its drawbacks, but you know, this new stuff is just kind of the best of both worlds. And they're sort of competing with Native Instruments from the other direction, which is we've got the standalone thing. How much can we squeeze out of it? Whereas stuff I've seen with the Machine Plus, the CPU just crumbles after like so many tracks. And to me, like, that's just dumb. At least Akai knows their limitations. Like, we're going to put lightweight plugins in here that are going to run real, making beats and using samples. And we're going to add some sweet effects and some lightweight plugins and let you get the job done. And I think that's cool.
What's the difference between a granular synth and a granular sampler?
Probably nothing.
Well,
aren't all samplers granular now? Does anybody still like you get that degradation if you go down 2 octaves?
I don't know. I mean, I have the Iridium, which isn't a sampler, but it does. You can load samples into it and use the granulator, which is its granule engine. And yeah, I mean, it's just super weird. It's maybe almost a little bit outside of my comfortable knowledge space. Like, I don't know how I get the sounds that I get out of it. I just screw with it until something sounds good. I'm kind of like where I was with FM like 20 years ago.
Okay.
Well, with granular, the thing that I think is the most interesting about it is that you pick whatever your audio region is that you're going to sample from, and you define the grain size.
Sure.
And then what frequency is it sampling new grains, and then what you get out of it, to your point, Justin, like some of it actually is there is no way to know, because some of what you get out of it winds up actually being like quite random.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably more predictable than FM to a human, but it's not as predictable as like a classic, left to right, East Coast analog.
Oh yeah.
Where I know exactly how to drop that sound. I can't do it.
Well, with like the 1010 black box, which has a granular mode that's actually a pretty interesting granular mode, you can pick a mega long sample. So you could pick a 15-minute long sample.
Wow.
And you could then take these that are a second or something like that, and then choose to reverse them and degrade the quality of them, and then play a new one every 2 seconds or something, and you can get some really bizarre effects out of some of it.
Yeah, granular sampling's amazing. I just don't know what granular synthesis is. But
I think it's the same.
Yeah,
you can't. I don't think you can have granular synthesis without a sample. Yeah. I mean, you can probably do it with a wavetable or something in theory, I guess. I don't know. But all the stuff I've seen is using either short or long samples, and just,
Yeah, I think it
Jeff
really is.
gave it a better write-up than I did.
I think it really is just like a rebranding of the word synthesizer, because I think sampler is coming with such connotations for people, especially now where, where sampler today to most of the population doesn't actually mean thing with keys that you load. Right. Either, you play a sample into, and you play it like a synthesizer, or so much of it is sort of like the beat sampling. And I think that it's just, I would assume that it's just down to the connotation implied by sampler, that they just want people to think of it as a synthesizer.
So Kai done something interesting. So it's not, they've actually made an insert effect. So it's not actually a synth in and of itself, right? So
okay.
Yeah, it's an insert I mean, I guess it functions in the exact same way. It's an insert effect. So you have a sample, and then you can do the exact same stuff, right? I mean, it becomes semantics at this point, what's a synth and what's an effect?
Yeah.
When you're drawing a sample through it, right?
All right. So what you can do is you can take the source that's coming in and then turn it into grains and stretch it the way you would with a granular sampler.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So rebranding.
I think that's what it is.
I mean, I think the scope of all the shit that they added with this update, and I'm just scrolling on this page right now, and it's sick.
Yeah,
I mean,
good for that.
We could spend this whole time, a whole hour, talking about all the stuff just in the 2.1 hours. It's pretty.
If we have to pad our hour,
I know, right?
Yeah, it's just really mental. I mean, besides all of the cool stuff that got on there for the plug-in sense, I mean, I would probably never use some of like their vocal harmonizers or doublers, but I would use airspeed or half speed, and I would use stutter. So there's a lot of cool stuff there.
You're not going to do any share covers?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I just don't think I have what it takes.
And they you just don't believe in life after love. They
if only I could turn back time, then I would, but I can't.
And they also gave us a real nugget in this update that they didn't mean to give.
Yeah.
Which is also pretty interesting. Which is that the update indicated that it also worked on a 61 key sampler that they're making.
That's on our list, isn't it?
Indeed it is.
That's that's a I don't know if it was an oops or that was just a way to get some press or people didn't think it would, who knows, but that's a pretty big one too that came out in this update that they're working on that. And if they're so far along that they're baking it into this update, that they have a working prototype that is running a previous version of it, and they have enough of them that it makes sense to start baking this update into it.
Consider they have the same OS on the MPC-X and Live 1 and 2, so why the hell not? You could put it in a freaking MIDI controlled harp if you wanted to. Like, not that you should do that, but I'm just saying, like, why not?
Somebody tell Vlad at Soma that we need a MIDI harp. That you play with your knee.
Yeah, that'll get you girls.
Totally. Hey, man, if my Soma pipe can get me laid.
Yeah. Hey, the lyres work, man. Lyres were hot back in the 1st century AD, man.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty neat. That's something that you haven't seen for a while, like a sampler with keys and
yeah,
it's cool.
Like, I mean, Akai, especially from Akai. When was the last Akai keyboard sampler that came out?
I believe it was the S1000 keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
And I played with one. My friend Darren, who was in the band with me at the time, loaned it to me, and it was sitting in my apartment, and I played with it friggin' endlessly. But, those floppies, man, you'd load a sound, it would be like 3.5 floppies. It's like, wait, it stopped buzzing. I have to go put the next floppy in.
That's why you played with it endlessly. It took 45 minutes to load a sample.
Yeah, exactly.
I do feel that way, yes.
But to put it in perspective, when the Akai S1000 keyboard came out, Ronald Reagan was president.
Yeah. Jesus Christ, I'm old.
Yeah,
I know.
Does that mean that the time for a keyboard-based sampler has come back again? Are we?
Well, they used to joke that.
I mean,
Ministry only made good albums when a Bush was in office, I think, was the one joke, and and now you can argue that they only make good Akai keyboards when
which was during Reagan too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was to say, I mean, With Sympathy is the only good Ministry album, so there was no Bush in charge then.
Yeah, I've heard that said, but I'm with you. I like the synth pop stuff the best. Sorry, folks.
With Sympathy is the only good Ministry
For me,
album.
Twitch is the best one.
Yeah.
Although Ministry or Al Jurgensen really sure with his album and not his. So that's why he argues it.
So blamed his record label. I don't care. I think it's a great album.
Yeah.
I mean, I discovered it as a teacher on 120 Minutes, and it rocked my world. And sorry, kids.
I love the fact that Al Jurgensen invested all that money in a British effects processor for his vocals.
Hey,
Eventide?
Those are expensive.
No, I don't know if it was Eventide. I don't know. It was just that he made sure that it sounded like he was British.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think it was a modified version of all the English soul singers that were trying to sound American pedals. Right. So
I can't give them a hard time for that. Lots of European and English singers sound American when they sing.
And a lot of Cleveland industrial bands sound British when they sing, so I understand.
Which is amazing. That's the Cleveland Sheffield connection, right? The sister city.
Yep.
So he said he sang like that because he was, emulating the stuff he was listening to at the time.
Yeah. Well, because remember, Andrew, at that Human League show back a million years ago, we were at remember he was making that commentary about how Sheffield and Cleveland were both in sort of post-industrial places, and that was pretty cool. I mean, he probably had a tagline for every city, but I thought that was cool.
Yeah, probably. He's like, this is just like Los Angeles was just like Sheffield.
This is a brand new sentence. No one's ever said those words in the order before. The history of the planet. I do think there is something to be said, though, for keyboard-based samplers coming back around, and I think that people are. I mean, I'm people most of the time. People are, I think, kind of tired of feeling so tethered to the computer. There was a time when computers, and not that computers like aren't enjoyable, but there was a time when computers were a lot more novel. And if you think back to the 80s and 90s, I think people, even who worked in offices who were using computers, they didn't feel like they were just handcuffed to a computer. And then when your hobby starts to, you know, when like a DAW looks, and like a lot of DAWs at this point just kind of look like office software or something, you know, like it's a different thing, but it's just, it doesn't feel like a game, and it doesn't feel as immediate. And I think people want to get away from the computer a bit more. And I think the pandemic over the past 25 years that it's been going on has really exacerbated that feeling for people. True. where they're you know, where they're like, they feel like they're on Zoom all day long. Yeah. And then when they sit down and they're like, oh, I want to go make some music now. It's not an inspiring environment for people. Like the context has changed around the computer, even though the DAW has gotten super powerful and crazy fast, and you can make amazing sounding stuff at home. Like there's a reason that the cassette Porta Studios are going for like $800 or $900. Some of it is like nonsense nostalgia and hipsterism, and some of it really is legitimately that people just want that kind of an experience. And I think that there's something to be said in a similar vein for like the sampler keyboard, that market coming back, is that people just, they want a thing that feels like an instrument.
You know, I have to back up what Jeff is saying here, and I'm not in that camp. I don't ever want to be without the computer. And I'm the only one I know that's like that. Every musician I've talked to in the last 2 years is either attempting to go DAW-less or has gone DAW-less. And for a variety of reasons. And we can partly blame OS updates and everything getting destroyed on your computer all the time. My Kurzweil, which is over 25 years old, still does exactly what it did 25 years ago. Not a single piece of software I had 20 years ago does a thing now.
Yeah.
So, you know, and like the sampler market got destroyed by soft samplers, and now like all the samplers that came in and destroyed the hardware sampler market, like Giga Sampler, don't exist anymore. And it really screwed up these industries where they needed high fidelity samplers. Like, oh, we'll use these, and then all that stuff was gone. So yeah, there is people want machines to work with, and if you can make it a computer and a keyboard and hide that it's a computer, you'll get away with it. But people don't want to think they're using a computer. They don't want to see an OS update or subscription model screw them on this. And
that's part of it. And, and you know, another thing that, because that burned me big time. Like that was one of the big pushes for me to get out of making music in the computers, is some updates. Like a span of a couple of years essentially lost me thousands of dollars worth of stuff that just was no longer getting updated and couldn't work right. Yeah. Like, and the other side of it too is that with the widget that you buy, like a lot of the audio software, especially soft synths, is pretty expensive. And so you pay your bunch of money for Native Instruments or your bunch of money for Serum or whatever you pay. And then if you decide you don't want it anymore, or it's borked because your computer blows up, you can't really sell most of it. Some of them you can transfer the license keys, but you know, mostly you can't really return your money on it. Whereas if I get tired of doing this, then I can sell this thing. But I mean, why would I ever get tired of doing that? Obviously. But
it's
I think that's part
a little
of it too.
sketch. It's sketchy to buy like a license key. Yeah, it's not something.
Whereas hardware retains value, and some of my hardware has gone down tremendously in value, like my Kurzweils, but others have gone tremendously up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even so, even if it's gone tremendously down in value, I mean, that sucks when that happens to us, but happens.
It doesn't
sometimes.
matter because I'm not selling it. It's still the tool I bought it to be.
Right.
Well, yeah, but also, even if it decreases a bunch in value, it didn't decrease to zero.
No, but almost.
Yeah, but I mean, there is still an appreciable difference.
Something goes from 3,000 to 230.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It's a lot, but I mean, you could at least still sell it.
Which
it wouldn't be
with my Sear Systems Reality
Right.
license. Yeah.
Yep.
Which was $500.
Wow.
Yeah, but that sort of stuff, and then the idea of like, I've just come to believe that I rent audio interfaces. I don't actually buy them.
Yeah.
I just rent them from the landfill,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, I just rented one for $550,
Oh my
and
God.
it'll work for probably a year before some OS update destroys it.
Yeah, and
I
then
have so many of them.
and if they do fix it, it'll halfway work, or I don't know. It's very annoying. So that's why I think this is cool. I would love to see a resurgence towards more things that feel like instruments.
Or what will happen is Apple will buy that company and make sure they don't update it.
Apple's going to buy a Kai. Just to upset Christoph.
Apple's going to buy Kurzweil.
Oh.
For $230.
Bitches.
They were a Korean company called Young Chang Incorporated. I think that's what they were called.
Well, that was the company that bought Kurzweil for a while, but that's also been liquidated. So now somebody else owns Kurzweil.
Do they?
For Kurzweil, they've got the K2700 coming out. There's a keyboard version, and it has a real sampler in it, meaning sample inputs, line level and XLR, which is missing from like the Roland and Yamaha samplers. You can't actually sample and you have to load samples in. So, because I remember when Jeff was going Dallas, I was looking for a decent high polyphony sampler for him to get. There was nothing on the market.
Yeah.
Look at Kai's, which have questionable polyphony. They don't have it dedicated because it's whenever you max out the CPU, that's where your polyphony drops.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and in the end, it turns out that all I need is an SP404 to make fart noises. Turns out that's where it peaked.
Polyphony anyway. Because how many times you've heard polyphonic farts?
Now, have you ever heard? You've heard of Supersaw, but let me introduce you to Super Farts.
And it's based on what your needs are. Like if I'm using a sampler to make like my drums, it'll wind up because of the rolls and layers, 40 or 50 notes of polyphony, and otherwise it'll cut off the tails.
Right.
But other people don't need that because they don't use the tails.
Right.
Yeah.
It all depends on how you're doing it.
Sure. Or you just do what I do and just mask the tail cutoffs with reverbs.
Yeah. Well, it's usually a sampled reverb that I'm using because I have the one hardware reverb.
Fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, so God, I love getting into this stuff. It's so cool.
That was a good tangent.
I know, right? It's funny because like in the chat they're talking about they were talking briefly about the samplers that don't sample, and when they had the Volca sample and the model samples, and now you also brought up the Roland samplers and the Yamaha samplers that don't actually sample.
Yeah.
But they call them samplers, but they're not.
And they're so expensive. How expensive would it be to add another audio jack on that thing? It's like what, $6? I mean, you're charging $3,500 for these units. Put on the input.
Astounding.
It's like I understand if it's a budget synth, but these aren't budget synths. These are flagships.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And your flagship should not be worse than something that came out 30 years ago. Like here, check out my flagship Samsung Galaxy Note 8, which does half of what the Galaxy Note 4 did, but it costs twice as much.
It's innovation.
Breaks faster.
Yeah.
They're innovative.
Or whatever the opposite. So, Soma Synthesizers is coming out with a new thing. And I love Soma because they're just fucking weird. And they don't...
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that. Is it Enner? I mean, is it a drum thing kind of with an oscillator kind of? I don't know. It's just a weird
like a
thing.
performance art piece.
It's friggin' cool. I watched the demo
Ouija board.
Yeah.
Of the guy who developed it. He has like a musical demo, and it's long, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. The tactileness of it with both of his hands on it like that, super neat.
Yeah, Vlad is an amazing, like, mad scientist. Like, I'm surprised that the Russians let him do things, period, and don't lock him up and stuff like that, and kind of like treat him like Lady Sherman.
They're using his technology and missiles or something, you know. There's got to be some sort of weird crossover.
Mind control or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, you buy a quantum ocean, and therefore you now think that quantum ocean watches you or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's just astounding our sensibilities and damaging our brains.
Yeah.
Do y'all know that band Sun? It's like a doom metal band that performs. Yeah. So this inner ought to come with a robe, like Sun plays. Like it's just a package deal.
Comes with like a
you
black
buy
hooded
this and
robe.
you get the robe. Yeah, because that is exactly the vibe of this thing. It's like some sort of occult ritual that you're conducting. The pot of, I don't know, bubbling dry ice or blood or whatever it is that you put in a pot when you're doing a sonic ritual is there, and you can have that. I thought it was neat. I really enjoyed the video.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I don't know if I buy one, but I don't know. Maybe they're cool.
Play with mine when I buy it.
Yeah. As per usual.
Yeah, you know, Daddy.
Andrew has the coolest toys.
The user interface, the interface on this thing is just like shit bonkers. Looks like part of a digestive tract was smeared across a microscope slide and zoomed in, and then someone drew a pyramid underneath it who was in 5th grade. That's how I don't know how else to describe this thing. I mean, this is just like, I think I saw this in health class in 5th grade. I don't know.
It's the pancreas next to Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
There's a lot of gallstones in this thing.
No, it's Maslow's pancreas because it looks like the hierarchy there.
Maslow's pancreas.
The hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
And also, all the food groups are well represented on the food pyramid.
Oh yeah, that too. It's the food pyramid. Yeah.
I never thought Abraham Maslow would be referenced in Tangents. Well done, Justin.
Hey.
But yeah, to me, I look at that and I think West Coast Synthesis, Don Buchla, I think a unit like this just has a philosophy behind it. And the person who made it is probably on medication.
Well, I mean,
or self-medicating.
Yeah, or he didn't take his meds, designed this, and we.
It's true. So the guy who designs stuff, the designer for, basically the guy who does all the stuff that Soma. Period. He's a wackadoodle guy. And he does have a whole philosophy behind everything that he builds, and his philosophy is insane, and it's lovely, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I bet this is amazing.
And I really love the fact that in my mind, Soma is actually run by somebody else, and they just have this guy locked in a cage somewhere with a whole bunch of soldering irons and shit, and he's just sits there and just makes these things look, it does this. And then
I kind of feel like it's a synth as if it were made by the Church of the Subgenius or something.
Yeah, right. I just watched. Have you seen the Subgenius documentary?
No.
I just watched it the other day. It was on Canopy. So if you're a public library card carrier, you can get a free subscription to Canopy, which is a streaming thing, and they have the Subgenius documentary on it. It was really good.
I used to hang with some of those cats. They were actually
ordained priest in the Church of the Subgenius.
Are you really? I didn't know that. I remember back in the 80s, at least in Minneapolis, they crossed the Mississippi between St. Paul and Minneapolis at the University of Minnesota, and it's got a covered bridge. It's partly pedestrian, partly bicycle, and there were these concrete benches every 30 yards, and every single one of them had J.R. Bob Dobb stenciled.
But yeah, this thing is just so Vlad's just a weird guy. He makes weird stuff, and I like to buy all the weirdest of things that he makes. Womber's asking about a link to the Subgenius documentary. I'll see if I can find it. Not right now though. Because I'm talking. So the and this looks like a weird ass thing that I'm totally gonna get. one of the things that he mentions on here is all the pots on this device are metallic and also function as inputs or outputs. So when you touch the pot, that does something as well as when you are turning it.
So you kind of like never know what you're going to get. You're going to hold it and it's going to be doing something and you're going to let it go and it's going to be exactly where you wanted it to not be. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's just a chaos machine.
Like the Lyra 8 is a total chaos machine as well if you play that thing, and you touch it and stuff like that and you're like, "What?" And it just does whatever it feels like doing because they use those little finger plates and like depending on how moist your fingers are. Or,
like how snappy the envelopes are.
Exactly.
You just said the M word, man.
Moist.
I hope the new Inner comes with a moisten knob.
I hope it does too. And it's just like and the whole thing and the whole device just starts to sweat when you turn it up.
It's the word that shall not be named.
I hope it comes with a Toynbee tile overlay.
Oh. I love Toynbee tiles. Have you seen the documentary?
Or you can make your own Toynbee tile that looks like this, and you're going to drop them out of your car.
I'm going to.
People go like that. Is that an Enter?
I think I will. Have you seen the Toynbee documentary?
No.
I saw it at your house.
That's right.
And then you showed me the one in Cleveland.
I don't know if it's still there or not. I need to go back and go out there and find it. So, Jeff, are you familiar with Toynbee tiles?
I am.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So if you get a chance to see the documentary, it's called Resurrect Dead.
Okay.
And it's a documentary is about the Toynbee tiles, but it's more about obsessive behaviors.
I know nothing about.
Yeah, I think you made me watch this, Andrew. I'm pretty sure you did.
Yeah, I might have. But yeah, it's...
I was
that documentary.
Yeah, I do remember this now.
Yeah.
Very, very weird stuff.
Yeah, there's one in DC, if I'm recalling correctly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's there's copycats too. So people like make fake ones and stuff as well.
Yeah.
I think it's just really cool. But yeah, it totally does kind of look like a Toynbee tile. I'm looking at it more.
Nice.
Like, it's kind of like Toynbee tile-ish. Man, now I need to go back and watch that damn documentary again.
You gotta go dig up one of those tiles and turn it into a synthesizer.
I know, right? Well, they're made out of tar paper.
Painter just did.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they show you how to make them.
Huh.
And how the guy would like literally had like a hole in the bottom of his car and he would drop them out of the bottom of his car and then people would just drive over him and that's how they got pushed into the asphalt.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like my parents' Datsun back in the 70s.
Yeah, it sounded like my 77 Nova that the driver's seat was missing the floor.
Yeah, it was the like Flintstone carmobile. Like, I think I remember my dad complaining that at that point in time they were making cars out of scrap metal, so they would just rust out.
Yeah, my Jeep certainly did.
Yeah, so Soma with the amazing what the fuck Enter. I don't even know. But I want one. I don't even know what it's gonna do, and I don't care. I want it in my hands.
I just hope it sounds like Author and Punisher.
Oh, everything needs to kind of sound like Author and Punisher.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, man. You need to just hook up a bunch of contact mics to this thing.
I know, right? And then a throat microphone.
Yeah.
And maybe like hitch it to a Strega. Like that and a Strega would be a wild ride.
There you go. So fun. So in a surprising move, Roland updated half of their plugins for M1 chips on the Mac instead of scrapping everything.
It was an accident.
That is surprising.
I know, right? I don't know how they did that. I figured they would have been like, you know, we were going to update this, but then I got my hands on a didgeridoo and decided that we need to model everything after that.
Yeah, Roland is kind of like squirrel.
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad they've committed to this a little bit.
Well, maybe Apple's found another way to make everything not work.
Yeah, I don't
It was
know.
still working. It was still working before they updated it to the M1 support.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
they have that emulation mode now, but they'll drop that and everyone will be screwed.
Well, no,
Yeah.
because everyone's updating to the
Like
M1.
Rosetta. What?
No, because
Yeah,
they're
but-
updating it. So like Roland.
Yeah, but I mean, once everybody's on the M1 chips, and then all your M1 software will work, but when they drop their Rosetta, compatibility layer, whatever they're calling it now, everything that has been updated to that new architecture is going to stop working.
Well,
Yeah, I mean that happened with OS X. So I mean,
yeah, it happened
Yep.
with the
But-
Intel transfer. But I mean, at the same time, people who
Sure.
don't have
Dude.
people that don't have M1s is okay. They'll still be able to
yeah,
use
it took forever, man.
Yeah.
It took them like 10 years or
Yep.
something crazy to drop that.
I'm still on Mojave, never leaving. This computer must run forever.
Ever. Yeah, I feel you. I'm about ready to drop it. I'm about to get a new Mac Mini. Probably be M1, obviously.
Yeah.
And so this is good. I'm going to do it mostly because I need to upgrade my audio interface, and I demand low latency, and all the stuff I have now is USB 3, and it works really well. But Thunderbolt port whatever 2 is
Yeah.
Now.
it's not. Yeah, it's not great. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to use what is their version of USB-C? Is it 3? I don't know.
USB
Whatever
4 now.
is before. Okay, well, that's all the interface that I also need a front-facing panel because of my patch panel-based situation. So PreSonus Quantum is the only one that does that. And yeah,
Those are slick.
so they got me because they don't have any native even USB-C or Thunderbolt 4 connectors on my 2014 Mac Mini. Again, I can use adapters for things like keyboards, but when I really want low latency, I'm not going to fuck around with an adapter. So they got me. They got me right in the chin.
So yeah, Roland updating that. M1 chips are nice. I like them, even though Christoph doesn't like them. That's okay.
I don't know. I don't have one. I'm never going to have one. This doesn't affect me at all.
I know.
Apple pretty screwed me. So
you updated to Windows 11 yet? Is that how affecting you?
I'm going to go to SCO Unix 5 because USB is a fad.
Yeah, man, you just need that DB9 connector, dude. That's all you need.
Yeah. RS-232 serial port for life, yo.
Scuzzy for life.
What about punch cards?
Which,
How do you
by the
feel about
way,
punch
my
cards?
eMagic Unitor 8 that Apple destroyed does have a serial port connection
Oh,
on it.
cool. So you can still run it on
Nice.
your Windows 95 machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me show you my HyperCard stack.
Yeah. I have so many SCSI drives.
Somebody's selling an Amiga 1200 with the fully loaded
Video
toaster. The video toaster, the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle, and it's like $3,000 or something crazy. There are people that still want that.
Those were all over news production in the early 90s.
They were the great equalizer, really,
Yeah.
because you could at that time.
And Babylon
And the
5.
first affordable sampler, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. What else? Oh, more Behringer news. Wambra loves us. They're working on a remake of the Pearl Syncussion SY1 drum synthesizer in a Eurorack format.
It looks like it's almost like that Neutron format where it's like Eurorack size. I don't know if is it going to be just a module, one big
It looks
module?
like it's just like a year. It looks like it's kind of like the same form factor as like the Model D and the Neutron in that box that has like the audio outputs on there and the MIDI, and you have the little dip switches to switch your MIDI channels around and a USB port, and then it's got like a couple of inputs for CV.
So I have to say I did some research on this because I wasn't real familiar with it. At least I didn't think I was. The Syncussion thing, and I'm a huge Aphex Twin fan. And as soon as I heard there's another company that made a Eurorack format one of these a couple of years ago. Actually, there's a couple of them, and I started listening to it, and I was like, holy fucking shit cakes! That's like tons of really Aphex Twin. This thing.
Yeah.
So
Like just the
who else
demo.
used the Syncussion?
What's that?
What's that?
You know who else used the Syncussion?
Front 242.
I want to say it was probably.
Christoph.
Oh, Skinny Puppy? Okay, Front 242 did too, so yeah.
Yellow Magic Orchestra inspired Kevin Key, and he was an early Syncussion user with a live setup.
It's so cool that they wanted it to be like a controller for like a tom pad, and then these people just, in the traditional form of the word hack, just did something really cool and weird with it. I mean, it sounds bloody great. If they can pull this off, that would be nice, but I don't know.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a cool sound, and it's not a sound that you hear. Kind of like the Polivoks, like it's not the sound that everybody's trying to emulate. Like everything is 808, 909.
Yeah,
and it is definitely a different sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not a sound I like, but for people that want that sound, this is a way to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you like IDM,
Kevin
and
Key
you
will probably buy one of these.
Sure.
Well, the nice thing also is that this is like a 2-channel syncussion too, so this gives you a little bit more.
Oh, okay.
Synthesis than just being able to just do like one sound at a time kind of thing. It does both country and western.
We have both kinds, country and western.
It does. All. It's got all the voices you need, because who needs more than a kick snare? You go boom bap boom bap.
Exactly.
That's all you got.
Or if you're doing.
There's no other drums.
If you're doing
Hi-hats are forbidden.
If you're doing drum and bass, then it's boom bap.
Nobody
boom, bap.
ever needs more than
All it needs
4K
is
of memory.
Bap, boom, 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 bap, and just
But
repeat
yeah.
that forever, and you've got all the drums you could ever need. Who could need more drums than
Hey
that?
man, if
Yeah.
Ringo Starr can do it with a kick and a snare and a crash cymbal.
Yeah. Well, quite
Yeah.
famously, hi-hats were banned from Depeche Mode songs for decades.
Well, crash
Yeah.
cymbals are banned from all of my music.
Yeah. I think Peter Gabriel and his 2 or 3 of his albums in the 80s banned both crashes, China cymbal crashes, and hi-hats. He didn't like that they took up all the sonic space unnecessarily in his But if you go back and listen to like Melt and Security and those albums, you can hear it.
I did not know that.
Cymbals come to the front a lot, and especially stuff like hats is so much of it's so repetitive, and it being so much up in the front, you should and it's all you hear. I can see
The only
banning.
person I've ever heard do hi-hats with such love and dedication that I would love to listen to it is Stuart Copeland. I really feel like he could make that thing sing. I mean, he hooked him up to these weird space echo pedals and did all kinds of stuff. Make it interesting, but
Yeah.
in general, you're right. It's kind of
No, his hi-hat timings are insane, and it's how he's one of the world's best drummers, and it's how he challenged himself by writing insane hi-hat lines to make it really difficult to play, and to challenge him so he wouldn't get bored, and it worked. It'll sound like it's simple until you try to do it, and then no, you can't do it.
exactly.
Can you count to 4 in one side of your head while simultaneously counting to 319 in the other? And that's the polyrhythm. You just count to 4. That's easy. And then 319.
Yeah. I was in a. Go
Okay.
ahead. I was in a punk band in high school called the Stiff Kitties, and our drummer, Brian Hollering, if you're out there, shout out to you, who was a big Stuart Copeland fan and was constantly sort of trying to emulate that style, and with much frustration.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I love
I mean,
boring repetitive
that's a
hi-hats
good
myself.
goal.
I like, they drive things. If I want to be different, then I'll bust out the pyramid and put them into a Euclidean rhythm and let them have fun.
I mean, yeah, I like repetitive hi-hats too. I can't get rid of the crash because, you can pitch shift your crashes like Jorgensen did on Twitch, and it sounds amazing. So yeah, whenever somebody says I hate hi-hats, it's like, what about on Twitch? Well, I like that.
No.
Okay, Twitch is a great album. I forgot about that album.
And he does really weird stuff with his hi-hats and his crashes, so it sounds more like these weird metallic noises, and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's his. I think that's his
boring
like. That's his like sort of transitional album, in my opinion.
It
Into
is.
Yeah.
I guess I
good
should say
stuff.
that the standard crash cymbal is like really difficult to tolerate, like work with, and like especially like with electronic music and stuff like that, without it sounding
Sure.
fake as fuck.
Yeah,
know.
and that's like in all those old drum machines, they sound incredibly canned.
Yeah, exactly. But taking it and like fucking
It's
with it and making it
painful
sound
sounding.
weird, or using something that's not a crash as a, you know, as that punctuation that you would use as a crash, then
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also down to style.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, it stylistically just makes me think of cheesy rock bands that I don't like and prog rock that I don't like, and so I guess I'm kind of affected by that somehow.
Yeah, like I also like crashes when they're distorted to
Mhm.
hell.
Nice.
Like, and if you drop it at the right moment, it can really explode. Like it can sound very exciting. But when you just like if you take the SR16 crash and you just use it, it just sounds cheap as
Yeah.
fuck.
Cheap as chips.
absolutely. The Argon 8 is adding 200 more presets and bug fixes in a new firmware. So that's cool. Modal Electronics is being very, very good with these, like with some of these, between this one and the sorry, brain fart. What am I thinking? The Cobalt.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the
Cobalt.
Cobalt.
Cobalt, yeah.
I know these are very similar, probably like very similar OSs and stuff like that, but they're adding some really cool shit in these things. And
Yeah, one's a VA and one's a wavetable.
Yeah.
I think, isn't that the difference? Yeah.
I mean, the form factor on these things are almost identical.
Yeah.
Like I said, yeah, and also apparently right now you can get $50 cash back
Nice.
when you buy one, and get entry into their golden ticket prize to win a dream sound designer setup.
Ooh. I'll tell you what I wish they would do is come back with some of their original models, like the Model 008 and the 001, and make them affordable to humans.
Right?
Yeah, their
Although
stuff was crazy expensive.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, the guy who was behind the Model 008 is the guy that developed the Udo.
Yeah.
Super sound.
So they'll never,
So
it'll
he won't
never
be
come
back.
back around.
Yeah, he won't be back.
Womp womp.
Sorry,
I
Jeff.
can't remember his name, but he's brilliant.
He can't remember.
He's
his name
dead
either.
to me until he ships me my synthesizer.
He's dead. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really comment on these synths because I'll never afford one.
Well, the Argon,
But people seem to really like them. The Argon and
those
the
are like
Cobalt.
$700, $800 cents.
Oh,
Yeah,
but
they're
those
not
are-
bad.
No, it's the Model 008 and 001.
Yeah, those are the ones that
and
are ridiculously
02.
expensive. Yeah, these ones are actually,
Yeah, they're
$100 million.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One
these ones are
million.
actually really good sounding synths, and they're really affordable. Like the desktop units, I think, are like $600, like $500-$600, respectively.
Yeah.
And like the Cobalt is, I'm almost tempted to get one.
I think that
Oh, yeah?
originally they were setting them up to be a shootout between ASM, Hydrosynth, and these devices, and you heard a lot of commentary about that. Like people thought, one sounded better than the other for various reasons, and I think you have a real Coke Pepsi thing, and that it's really down to preference. But I think if you want good stuff and wobbliness, I think the ASM is probably a better choice. But I will say the wavetables on this thing sound I can't think of the words escaping me. Shit. No, the quality of the wavetables. What's the adjective I would use for that? Shoot, I can't remember. But they sound really, really good. That's all I'm going to say.
The Hydrosynth, I don't know how the modal stuff has it implemented, but the Hydrosynth has it a little bit unusual, I think. That it doesn't natively like scan through a set of things. You kind of have to set it up to do that.
Mhm.
Interpolation. Sorry, interpolation. That was the word I was like.
Oh, yeah. It's like very smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Hydra's pretty cool, but you kind of have to tell it that you want it to do those things.
That wave scan thing is super weird. I just feel like I'm stacking stuff, like making a sandwich. It's kind of.
Yeah. I just finished making a monster Hydrosynth patch that is built on the wave scanning, but it does it automatically.
Oh,
like tying it to one of the LFOs, and then does all sorts of other bizarre stuff. I think that synth is super cool. I'm always like, every time I sit down and design something on it, I always feel like I've found, like I find something new kind of every time, or come up with some other weird thing to do with it, especially with the macros.
So I don't want to go into the weeds, and only have 17 minutes, but are you using the LFO to switch the wavetables or the frequency or of switching, or that's
basically the way that it's the way that the Hydrosynth works is for your set of waves, you can set up however many you want, and they're up to 8. And so I have the LFO essentially using the LFO to scan through them.
That's friggin' cool.
So essentially, every time the sine sort of repeats on it, I'm just using a sine wave in this case. So every time it sort of cycles back through, it moves to the next wave, and then essentially I have macros that can sort of both change the speed at which the sine is cycling, and then also do some folding of that sine in the LFO, so it can really make it jagged and get the wavetable to become like really jittery or weird.
Right. That's pretty badass, man.
It's fun. It's a really cool synth.
Definitely. Sorry, I'm seeing that I'm getting suddenly a whole bunch of dropped frames right now, so I'm wondering if I might have forgotten to turn off my Plex server. So apologize, everybody. Well, looks like we're back up to regular frame rate now. Cool. So let's see what else we got here.
We talked about the Akai already.
But you can turn your Super Nintendo Entertainment System into a synthesizer.
This is the coolest thing ever.
Talk to me about this.
So fun.
So of course, all of the old, well, not all of, most of the old consoles, especially from the 8 and 16-bit era, had essentially onboard synthesizers and sound chips on them. And if you can just get at them, they're MIDI addressable. Mm-hmm. And the Super Nintendo has, I think, I really love the Genesis sound chip. It has sort of like an edgier, harder. I mean, the sound of the Genesis to me is like the sound of Streets of Rage. That's the prototypical like Genesis sound, but the SNES is very. It's kind of very warm and lo-fi, and just kind of dust. I don't know. I love the sound of it, and so I turned on this video of this dude showing this thing off, and there was Final Fantasy, and there was Link to the Past, and there was some Mario World, and it was just like, wow, it's so exactly the thing that it is. I don't know. It just sounds really cool. And I love that it's just a cartridge, that it doesn't require any hacking of the system. Like everybody else that I've seen try to tackle things like this, they're trying to circuit bend the systems or edit them in some way. And, I don't know. I'm a little bit weird about these things. I think
of LSDJ, which is also a cartridge.
Right.
Yeah, it's true.
For Game Boy.
For Game Boy. Yep. That's very true.
Yeah.
I've heard some people do some really cool things with the Game Boy, but its engine is just
it's nothing compared to the Genesis engine.
Right.
Yeah, it's just too
The
bleepy
Genesis
bloopy.
engine sounds amazing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've heard people do good things with the Atari 2600. I think it depends on how much effort you put into it, and the whole chiptune scene is so niche and so crazy. I don't really consider chiptune a genre. It's more like saying, guitar, right?
Right.
Because it's like what you do with it is important. I mean, there was like hardcore chiptune people.
I guess it's just working within these limitations, and then it's broad because you can do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it depends on which limitations, because there's people that use Genesis. I think Genesis is 16-bit though, but Game Boy is 8-bit, and the Commodore 64 SID chip was 8-bit, and people do amazing things with that SID chip.
Yeah. Well, the SNES is 16-bit, and it's interesting because it sort of I think the thing that I really like about it and the Genesis sound is you could go chiptune with them, but it actually isn't where the thing wants to be.
Right.
The sound of the SNES is very much, Nintendo was trying to get away from that. They were trying to make more complex sounds. And so what they ultimately got to was something that feels like kind of a dusty lo-fi version of a hi-fi thing.
Which is great for, I mean, if you're making lo-fi tracks, I mean, that's right up your alley right there.
Yeah, I mean, for a cheap amount, they really increased the sound quality quite a bit, and gave composers something they could really work with. Like you could load samples like into it, right? Like, so that really opened up like the drum sounds that were available or other sounds. And I can't remember the architecture of this one. Does this have 2-operator FM, or is that just some of the others?
I'm reading about it right now. It doesn't look like it had any FM. It was actually 9-bit.
9-bit. Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
weird.
The system.
It was all sample based. And what they were doing was that they were doing what do they call that? It's basically you take like just like a single cycle waveform is what they were doing. They loaded it with a bunch of single cycle waveforms, and then they would just loop them, and then that's how they would do these with these really small, really weak processors and stuff like that were in there.
Yep.
So the DSP was 9-bit, but I think the game console itself was still 16.
Yeah,
right?
the game console itself, the sound thing was a 9-bit audio format.
That's so interesting.
And they had.
So that explains the dusty, that 8-bit, 9-bit dust.
And they had a 64 kilobyte RAM pool. And so the composer still had 8 sample channels to work with, and they could deploy the RAM as they saw fit.
Wow. I just think it's so cool that this guy made this. I mean, there's a lot of homebrew stuff in this community, They're mostly people making games. I mean, there are people that even market like carts for, some of these games. But but this is the first time I've seen this level of we're going to do something other than play games with it, using that sort of homebrew cart model. And I think that's fucking awesome.
And it's also I think it's kind of cool that they're planning to do one run of it.
Yeah.
It's $100, which is not bad at all. They're running the pre-order for about 3 months, and then they're going to make them, and that's it.
Well,
I think dude just wants one. I think he just secretly, he just wants one of the production run. This is what it takes to get there.
Yeah, that's pretty slick, though.
But it's cool. I'm excited about it. I think it'll be fun. Even if just for no reason to go back then and try to recreate some of the tracks. But I think, one of the things that draws me to it too is that the SNES had some really iconic compositions on it. And sort of in retrospect, you can look back at some of the NES games and hear some of that. Like you can hear some of it in Mega Man, but it's not obvious until you've heard the better version of it that there was really something there. And the same thing is true with the original Legend of Zelda. But then like moving to Link to the Past, it's just, I don't know, it takes it from like catchy tunes like Mario that everybody can hum like immediately into really rich stuff.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So yeah, I'm a fan of 8-bit and a lot of these different old sound engines and doing things in a weird way. And you can produce sounds that you really can't produce easily in any other way. So sometimes that's really amazing. Mm-hmm. It's like, so this app that I'm always talking about called Caustic, it has a synth that has an 8-bit synth, and it does something called generative synthesis. And it's the weirdest oscillator I've ever seen. And I've got nothing else that does anything like it. So, it's just more fun tools. And sometimes work like there's a band, it used to be a noise band called Clankstabil. Mm-hmm. And when he got a Game Boy and LSDJ, he made an entire album out of it. And it was really interesting. And I'm sure because like coming at it from a noise perspective, he made very different choices than other people would have with it.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Adventure Time, I think that's what the creator, I can't think of his name. Oh God, what's his name? It's escaping me. But yeah, I think he did some of the early soundtrack work with just a Game Boy, which is pretty impressive.
Nice.
Yeah, Preston Ward or something Ward. He has some
Pendleton Ward.
Pendleton Ward. Yeah, he had some fancy mothers or grandmothers of the American Revolution type of name. Esquire.
Manuel, my Cyclops assistant. And finally tonight, we have this whole thing about the FTC announcing unanimously voting yesterday to ramp up law enforcement against repair restrictions that can prevent you from fixing your gear.
So when they say law enforcement, are they going to like be
Apple.
taking?
I wonder if
they're
they're
going to
going to
go
start breaking down the doors and be like, you have to let them fix your laptop.
Yeah, don't tase me, bro.
Well,
Just
I
gonna
mean,
kick in everybody's door and give them a
Yeah,
screwdriver.
pretty much.
Seriously.
I mean, Europe told Apple what to do, and that worked out.
Yeah, look how well that's doing.
Yeah,
But,
so they're not
this
going
is-
to change.
So you,
But
This is a big thing.
this will change John Deere, but it's not going to change Apple.
Well,
Apple's going to do whatever Apple wants.
So Andrew, tell me about that, because I mean, you used to work where you still do probably some degree hands-on stuff, but especially with their phones, I mean, stuff I was reading I didn't really know much about, which was, the fact that they use adhesives and they do all this kind of. I mean, do you think that there's legitimacy, or is that really subterfuge, or what's going on?
Here's what's going on, and this is kind of like you're looking at this from different design standpoints, and that is, people want things small, people want things thin, people want things like that, and people also tend to be disposable. We live in a disposable culture, and is it going to be cheaper for the manufacturer to glue something together than it is to screw it together? Yes. And 99%, 95% of the population doesn't give a shit. Because
what do you think about these like cottage industry people that make a living off of? I mean, I know some people that had franchises where they would fix stuff.
Sure. And they still do that, and they still it's not all this most. I would say that pretty much all cell phones nowadays are glued together more than they are screwed together. Modern things, whether they're Apple, whether they're Samsung or whatever cell phone company, they're gluing them together because it's easier than getting like your dies out and creating very tiny screw sets, and it's easier to assemble if you can just slap some glue on it and call it a day. Is it difficult to disassemble? Yeah, I still do it. I mean, I still take apart laptops that the batteries are glued in there. And I still go in and pull the batteries out and stuff like that. It's not insurmountable. It takes a little bit of time, but it's not insurmountable. It's not as fast as back in the day when you just pulled 3 screws out. But again, at the same time, when you're talking about modern laptop computers, which are nowadays 85% battery and 15% circuit board.
Crazy.
It's going to have to be and is also like thin enough to shave your face with. You're and light and all this other stuff. That's kind of what you're looking at as far as that is concerned.
There's a lot more to this legislation than that,
right.
though. This legislation originally came out because of John Deere tractors, where the farmers couldn't change the firmware on the tractors, which was making them not useful for them, and so John Deere said, "You can't mod, but it belongs to you to change." So it came up also for people manufacturing cars. The auto manufacturers started saying, hey, you've got this standard OBDI part for doing your diagnostics. Well, we're going to make it proprietary, and you can only buy the tools for us, and we're going to decide who we're going to sell these tools to, and you can't have them.
Right.
But it's your car, but you can't work on it or fix it because we won't give you the proprietary tools that we made sure that we deviated from a standard to keep you from fixing it so that we can create a monopoly on who can work on your car.
Yep.
So it came up because of that. But also, like for Apple, they said, all right, well, if you go to one of these shops that'll fix your screen, if they, we're going to make sure that the serial doesn't match, and the OS is going to check the serial on the screen. And if the serial part on that screen doesn't work, we're going to brick your phone.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of it right there.
So bullshit.
Right.
So there's legislation saying, hey, maybe you can't do that. But
Right.
what I'll say for like the government telling companies what to do, because that Apple can turn on and off
Right.
with code. But the European Union, hey, all the cell phone manufacturers, all of them have to use the same interface, because we're sick of people throwing out like our landfills are filled with all these power adapters, and Apple said and came out with Lightning instead of USB. So.
But
So no, Apple does whatever they're going to want to do, and
Sure.
they'll get away with it, because
I understand.
people will,
Sure.
because people will vote anyone out of office that comes between them and their iPhone, and the government knows that Apple is more popular than every politician. So Apple will do whatever they want, but for others, it's important legislation. What?
From their business model, though, they're not. Look, they're going to sell widgets whether you can repair them or not. It's a niche market of people that are going to be buying used phones, or like me, hesitantly, begrudgingly updating my phones. Like you get to this model of like, should you legislate that, or should you use, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but should you just let market forces control that somewhat? I mean,
Well,
you know what I mean?
What are you going to do if you can't fix your car? Because all the car, hey, let's make sure that nobody can change their oil. They can legally do that, right? So you have to have legislation that says, no, you can't legally do that, because otherwise they will.
Or
Sure.
if you don't buy our brand of tires and your warranty is void, that's another thing that is essentially coercive tactics applied to maintenance of warranty is another big component of right to repair, wherein essentially, you're saying, well, I've done nothing. Told me that I have to buy your thing, which is artificially 45 times more expensive.
Right.
Or
So the question, though, is it sort of semi-fraudulent bad use of monopoly power more so than anything else? I mean, right to repair really means, the earlier comment about hobble you like completely if you try to repair it, that Christoph did. To me, that's like malicious anti-right to repair, and that's total BS.
And that's exactly what John Deere was doing.
it's not really,
originally came up because of John Deere.
and this isn't really going after the idea of making products that are more repairable. It's about saying, hey, look, and that's the same thing happened with Apple, and Christoph, your point about the Lightning versus USB, that would have been better for everybody. It was like, look, we have reasons for doing this, and you're not in the business of designing our product, which is probably a rational response, I guess, from them. But I think a lot of it is not actually about saying, hey, you've got to make it with screws, not glues. It's about saying if somebody takes it apart, you don't get to apply a punitive damage against them because they took it apart.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at the bigger picture too from an ecological standpoint, which is, if you're going to get into it at that level, it's like, you need to make things that are going to work for a long time, which flies in the face of all corporations' planned obsolescence initiatives, right? So, I mean, it's a much larger issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they got rid of the removable batteries, because, otherwise you don't have to buy a phone in a year. You can buy batteries and keep using your phone. So they made sure that it's inside and you can't swap it out.
How long have you had that phone?
Yeah. I'm not going to disclose that. Longer than I should have. Actually, I have an iPhone 12 now, but I did have an older version for many years.
You had like an iPhone 4 until like last year.
Yeah, it was a 6, but yeah.
I have an iPhone.
No, well, here's the deal. It fucking worked.
Right.
Until they stopped updating it. And once they stopped fucking updating it, I had no choice. Which is also a fair argument that they're not going to endlessly update the software,
Yeah, and that's fine. But you can't say, you replaced your screen with a phone. Like, for example, if the serial numbers don't match. So if you have two iPhone 4s and you swap one screen to the other, the update would say the serial numbers don't match and brick your phone.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's bullshit.
Having an old ass phone is something that, I mean, I get that there's a point where you're like, okay, it's been 5-6 times to move on. But I do like the idea of people being able to recycle stuff and use it. Mm-hmm. But because phones aren't phones, they're fucking computers on a stick. You've now created a huge security problem if you've got a bunch of unpatched phones, and it's just a bunch of crazy
but still,
shit.
It's not about saying you can't have your phone. It's about saying if you want to fix your phone, you can.
Mm-hmm.
I get
Yeah.
it.
And here we have
Sure.
companies saying you're not allowed to fix your phone. Only we can fix your phone, and we're going to charge 10 times what they're going to charge.
Right. Or we're just going to push you into a new phone because that's
Yeah,
where we
it's like,
make
all right, well, you could replace the screen for $2,000, or you can buy a new phone for $1,300.
Right.
Yeah.
Although that guy used to sell you a new screen for $200, but we won't let him do it anymore.
Yeah. And the price of some of this stuff is just absolutely crazy. I was in a position of needing to replace a phone a while ago because it had I had a 7. So I was there with you on like hanging on to it for as long as possible.
Yeah.
But I was having really bad problems with port.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked into replacing the charging port, and it was hundreds of dollars
Jeez.
to replace the charging port. It was just like $100 than buying a 12 mini. So I just bought the 12 mini.
Yeah. That's the same one I have, by the way, as a mini. I like it.
It's good.
So yeah, this this is a cracked screen, and it's only $600 to replace it. The screen.
Jeez.
To steal.
That's ridiculous.
And it's
Well, that was a hell of a
even
tip.
like trying to. I mean, and, there's companies out there that do a lot of like right to repair based philosophy. Like iFixit's a big one. That's one I use a lot.
Yeah.
I work with them a lot and stuff like that on doing stuff.
They're
And
good.
fantastic. Like I've put together repair guides for them and like take apart manuals with them and stuff like that. And they're a great company in there. And they're really supportive of that kind of thing. But even still, it's just like some of the stuff that like like you're talking about, like the trying to replace the power in that thing. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, and I think that's part of it as well, is that there's the right to repair, but there's also the idea, the fact that it's still, that doesn't make the repair cheaper. There's a labor associated with that kind of thing. It's just like back in the day when people were like, well, why is replacing the screen so expensive? I mean, I understand that the screen's expensive, but why is the labor so expensive? I'm like, because literally the last instruction is after you take apart the entire computer, all that's left is the screen. That's an hour's worth of me taking apart the fucking computer and an hour to put it back together for you,
Not to mention that the production cost of the screen is probably 80% of the value of the thing in the first
exactly.
place.
And again, the legislation isn't saying that they have to make
Right.
it easy, or that they have, it's just that they can't make it illegal for you to modify or repair your unit, which was coming up because car manufacturers were saying you're not allowed to work on your car, and John Deere was saying you're not allowed to fix your tractor. Only we're allowed to fix your tractor. And which means you don't own your tractor.
Yeah, you rent it.
Yeah, except for you bought it. So who does it belong to? It's like, give me my money back.
Exactly. Yeah. If I'm just leasing this thing, there's a software license agreement that that I've agreed to not really own this thing because of firmware. That's the thing that's just kind of ridiculous. And that's like a subscription model in.
I was just gonna say they've caught on to the subscription model. They were companies that made no fucking money in any other way other than subscription model, and they're like just getting fucking greedy, right? Because they're already
spent $23,000 on your fucking car. What do you mean I gotta like subscribe every year for to get software updates for
Subscribing to tractors is not sexy.
Combustion engine should be a subscription model.
Hey, when I think of cars, I think of Spotify subscription model.
I think of Creative Cloud and.
I think in the next show we should talk about all these crazy. We should have one like arts and entertainment / science section, and I'd like to talk about these crazy lawsuits, like because in terms of people claiming that they're infringing upon their rights with like. I think what's her face just got sued for some like tiny little line in the song. They're like, no, you stole our song. Yeah, was it Katy Perry that got sued?
Oh, patent trolling, basically.
Yeah, but also music trolling and stuff like that too, where people are finding.
That's what it is.
Like people have gotten takedown notices on YouTube because of sounds that sound similar to somebody else and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, Starsky Carr, right?
Starsky Carr got a chemical takedowns a couple times for just doing a
Filter
filter
sweep.
sweep.
Yeah. But yeah, people were like, the one person on YouTube said something like, no, you cannot copyright the minor key, you know, and it's like, it's literally crazy shit like that.
Yeah.
But also
I'm gonna
patent
copy
trolling
the
and stuff like
copyright the
that.
4/4B.
I think that like, you know, it would be a fun topic to talk about and is both like, you know, that whole idea of what I'm thinking nowadays is like, you know, note trolling with music and then like, you know, patent trolling. I still think that I need to patent the process of patenting and then I'm going to sue everybody.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Fucking
That's how I'm
brilliant.
going to make my jillions.
I'm going to call my first character witness of Albert Einstein, the patent clerk.
Exactly. I don't care if he's dead.
I'm gonna open up
Zombie
abortion
Einstein.
clinics on Indian reservations.
What's that?
I'm gonna open up abortion clinics on Indian reservations for all those states where people can't come to the reservation.
There you go.
And I'm gonna make billions killing babies.
Oh my god.
I don't know why people won't send us free stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we just lost all of our QAnon fans for about 5
Yeah.
seconds there. Oh, wow.
I gotta get.
Well, our legal team of Commander Root hasn't said anything yet, so
It must be fun.
yeah,
He's
I
drunk.
think he is. I think Commander Root, lawyer Commander Root is in company. I think let's see who else is on the legal team. Zippy Shavit,
Alex Assimilate.
Alex Assimilate, and another TTV viewer. I think those are
We just need to
our
make
legal
you
team.
need to make a like a law firm name out of this, like Dewey Cheatham
I
and
know,
Powell or
right?
something, you know?
Yeah, that's our,
Oh God, there's a deep car talk reference.
Yeah. Harvard Square, Affair City.
Oh my god! All right, it's after 11. It's time to look for us to go. I need to go to bed. I gotta wake up early tomorrow. Done dealing with you miscreants. Anyway, I love you all. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining us.
We love you, Aaron.
Christoph, Jeff, Justin, always a pleasure to have you guys on.
Always a pleasure to hang.
Always a pleasure
I
to
killed
build
this-
abortion
Absolutely.
clinics
You're right,
on
Clive.
reservations. Jesus, this conversation. Let's see. Who are we going to raid tonight?
Hi, I'm
I
terrible.
love you.
I love you, but I'm not in
Well,
love
yeah,
with you.
there's that.
Yeah.
Oh no!
All right, let's go over to the Graceful Bard.
I mean, we need to talk.
Oh my god.
I
You're
love the
deliciously off the hook stuff. I love
Right.
it.
All right, everybody, have a great night. Good seeing you all. Thanks for watching, robots. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Off to the Graceful Bard. Take care.
Ciao, bello.